Hi guys, welcome to the Wrestling Retrospective, and in today's video I want to kind of share with you and any new subscribers who have maybe followed or come across the channel following the WWE move to Netflix, like a kind of bunch of pay-per-views / premium live events that I think new viewers to WWE or returning casual fans should really seek out and watch for like a good idea of kind of not only a variety of wrestling in general, but just kind of find the niche that they want to find within wrestling. So yeah, let's get into the video. Now, as like a kind of disclaimer, I'm not going to go through the card of the pay-per-view or premium live event match by match by match. I kind of talk about the bigger parts of the pay-per-view and why I feel like it should kind of be on this list, and like, I don't know what won't only entertain fans but kind of help them understand the lore of wrestling and learn, almost like not learn but like let them know about the traditions that we have in WWE, like such as Money in the Bank, Elimination Chamber, Survivor Series, all these different matches that kind of we have annually for specific events. And yeah, also like you shows the plethora of different styles of matches so people can kind of find the type of wrestling that they want to enjoy. But yeah, so let's get into the list. So I want to start off with Survivor Series 2006. Now this may be a bit of a more out there pick for like more traditional wrestling fans. I think it's probably not the first pay-per-view you think of when showing people or new fans a pay-per-view, but in my opinion, a phrase you'll hear a lot during this video, it kind of shows the tradition of what Survivor Series is really well. It has more comedy elements that I feel like people would enjoy even if they don't understand kind of the storyline or anything like that. It has a lot of recognizable faces on it, people that, you know, faces that people will recognize and associate with the WWE a lot. And yeah, it just has that kind of overall good feel to it in my opinion. I think it's one of the more underrated pay-per-views when it comes to like some of the best, especially for Survivor Series. But yeah, there's 3 traditional elimination tag team matches, one of which sees a lot of legends, which people will obviously enjoy because they'll see the likes of Ric Flair and Roddy Piper, and I think Dusty Rhodes is in it as well. And they also get the comedy element of kind of what the Spirit Squad was. I know they were heels, not a comedy thing, but obviously people are always going to get a good laugh out of the Spirit Squad. One of them, it has a complete clean sweep to it, and the DX versus Rated RKO match, where, you know, again, your very recognizable faces in the likes of Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton, Edge, and of course the Hardy Boys, as well as a very young CM Punk, or not young CM Punk, but like early into his WWE career CM Punk, who's incredibly over with the fans at the time as well. And the other match, which is kind of your more standard Survivor Series matchup, where you have Team Cena versus Team Big Show, where you kind of have the back and forth, you have the eliminations, you have kind of what we know to be, as I said, a pretty standard elimination tag match. You also have The Undertaker versus Mr. Kennedy in a First Blood match, which I feel like would show how good Mr. Kennedy really was and how conniving he was as a heel by the way he won the match. But also, people love The Undertaker, and I think Kane gets involved as well in the match, and people love him as well. So again, more recognizable faces for people who kind of are getting new into it, but also a very good match overall. And, you know, obviously people love that bit of violence, or at least some people do, and having that first blood stipulation works really well. And of course we have the big main event match where, again, another very recognizable face in Batista kind of wins the World Heavyweight Championship in what is not only a great moment but a great match as well. And yeah, for me, like, kind of everything hits as far as like what a casual fan or a new fan might really like about a pay-per-view. Following that, I have Backlash 2023. For me, this is definitely one of the better pay-per-views in more recent memory, and a lot of people it shows what a lot of people like in wrestling. It has great matches to spectacle wrestlers, if you will, celebrity involvement, and most importantly, an absolutely fantastic crowd. But yeah, you get both ends of the spectrum as far as women's matches go. You get a very dominant and one-sided performance from Rhea Ripley in her match against Zelina Vega, but you also get a very good technical wrestling match, and just probably one of the better matches for the women of 2023 with Bianca Belair versus Io Sky, a match that I rate very highly myself, and yeah, like probably a match that, if anything, kind of ended up stealing the show. You get the very recognizable musician in Bad Bunny kind of going face to face with Damian Priest in a street fight, and kind of showing up that, like, even though he's more in the mainstream, he can absolutely go in the ring, and it's very shocking to see whenever he does get in the ring. And it's probably I think he's only had 2 matches, but it's definitely the better of the 2 matches once he's had. And yeah, just really cool seeing like a mainstream celebrity kind of be in the wrestling ring. And of course, you have the entrance for Bad Bunny as well, which is just absolutely fantastic, especially the crowd involvement. And yeah, you have the kind of the spectacle of wrestlers, and what I mean by that is like the kind of larger than life people who we don't really see very often, especially not nowadays. In Omos, 7'3" guy, people are going to wonder how the fuck anyone's going to beat this guy, and of course Seth Rollins does go on to win that match. And of course we have Brock Lesnar, and yeah, having both Omos and Brock Lesnar lose on that pay-per-view kind of, I feel like it would show people that like it's not all about big guys, dominating matches and stuff like it used to be. It's very much a case of like the smaller guys. I mean, I know that Cody and Seth aren't smaller as far as them, more like stature-wise. And yeah, I mean, like it just shows kind of those two are so good in the ring, they can have a good match with anybody. And yeah, I just feel like, this show as a whole kind of has, again, everything you could possibly need. It has a really hot crowd, which obviously helps the show itself. You get Lesnar versus Cody, which is really good. Bianca and Io steal the show. It's just a really good show to show new fans or returning fans kind of what it's all about in the newer eras under Triple H. After that, I have WrestleMania 37. Now, okay, I know it's not going to be everyone's first choice of WrestleMania, but there is 3 WrestleManias on this list, so there is 2 more to come. But I think at the time, I think we can all agree that this was a very special feeling WrestleMania, with the kind of disease of 2020, if you will. I won't say it because of YouTube and stuff, but, kind of coming off the back of that, and we're kind of getting towards having fans back all the time, it did feel like a really special show. And yeah, it just had a bit of wrestling from top to bottom. It had great wrestling, great storylines, and like different styles, as well as, of course, like I'll probably say a lot of recognizable faces. Yeah, say one celebrity. There was celebrity involvement on both nights when we had Bad Bunny, I think, on night 1, and we had Logan Paul on night 2, which people, either way, whether you're into music or whether you're into like YouTube and social media, you're going to know who these people are, and you're going to be surprised to see them in ring. I know Logan's was more on the outside, but if you see him here, they might look into him a bit more in wrestling, and they'll see that he is a pretty good wrestler, as hard it is to admit. And yeah, the kind of special feeling throughout kind of continued when you have guys like The Fiend. You see his entrance, the way he comes out, the aesthetic of The Fiend. People are going to get very hooked and interested in that just by seeing it alone. Yes, again, I know he lost the match, and wrestling fans, like the regular ones, will know in the long term that this was a terrible decision, but just seeing the aesthetic, I think, will interest people and want to look into that a bit more. And yeah, you've got as well Roman Reigns as the tribal chief in almost its infancy, and you kind of see it when it's not quite in its prime yet, but it's kind of getting there. He's got Paul by his side, he's got Jey Uso by his side, he has a great match with one of the most recognizable people in WWE, in Edge, and you have Daniel Bryan as well, one of the best wrestlers, but it won't be the last time I mention him on this list. And yeah, it's kind of seeing, if people have watched the Raw on Netflix and seeing what happened with Roman and Solo, and then they see Roman here, who's kind of on top and dominating the place, they can kind of get a good idea about what's going on with Roman, and they might invest in that bloodline story a little bit more. But for me, kind of the more important part of this pay-per-view was the night 1 main event, and having Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair not only be the first 2 black women to main event at WrestleMania, but to be the only second time the women main event of WrestleMania, and in my opinion it is by far the better match, and in my opinion it's probably the best women's match in WWE history, in my opinion. I know that it can be very, I mean, at least on the main roster I feel like there's one NXT match that is a bit better than it, but yeah, I mean, for me it's a history making match, and it just kind of shows that like the women are in a lot better position, especially like for casual fans who like almost have to think of, oh, women's wrestling doesn't really matter. It really does. And though nowadays it's not in the greatest positions like it was back then, it really feels like they can get back to that point at some point. And yeah, it's just a really good showing for the women, and just the showings in general just feels really special in my opinion. And yeah, like I say, getting the crowds back just before we kind of leave the pandemic era. Yeah, I feel like it's a really good show to give people an idea of what it was like during the pandemic and just all that kind of stuff, really. Next up, I've got Money in the Bank 2011. I'm not going to lie, apart from the Money in the Bank ladder matches and the 2 world title matches, this undercard isn't really the best. You know, Mark Henry versus The Big Show and Brie Bella versus Kelly Kelly aren't the best of matches. But if you concentrate on the kind of bigger matches on the show, this is really good. But yeah, Christian and Randy Orton have a very underrated feud in my opinion. And this match kind of shows that not all stipulations end up kind of thwarting the heel, as Christian would like go on to use the stipulation actually in his favour. The 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches are 2 very different kind of styles of Money in the Bank that you can see, instead of it being quite rinse repeat. Like, it's not always, but like for a while it was very repetitive with Money in the Banks, whether it was 2 men's on the card or the men's and the women's. But I feel like these 2 are very solid picks for Money in the Bank ladder matches, with Alberto Del Rio and Daniel Bryan getting wins in those ones. And yeah, they kind of give a different vibe, in my opinion, to each other, which is why they're good picks to kind of what different kind of Money in the Bank ladder matches we can get. And it also makes people familiar again with the idea of Money in the Bank. And you know, for casual fans, they get reminded of what it is, and for newer fans, it gets explained very, very deeply what the idea of Money in the Bank is. And also, back then, the men's Money in the Bank was 100% success rate. Obviously, it's not the case nowadays, very much not the case nowadays. But it kind of shows what stakes are at hand with those briefcases, pretty much. And of course, you have the feud starter, but obviously one of the best matches in WWE history, in John Cena versus CM Punk. And yeah, I mean, the video package alone will hype up anyone for this match and kind of get them invested in this story, in my opinion anyway. The match is an absolute classic and shows pro wrestling probably at its best. And yeah, the result and then the panic at the end can get anyone invested in the story going forward through, you know, what should have been the summer of Punk, and then into CM Punk's title reign as WWE champion for so long. Yeah, I just think I feel like you had to put a Money in the Bank here somewhere because it's such a big tradition in WWE. For me, I feel like this is probably the best one to go for as an overall show, rather than just a single match for like the Money in the Bank. Following that, I have the Royal Rumble 2017. Rumbles are always hard to choose, especially like choosing one for like a new viewer. You could have 2001, it's arguably the best one. You could have 2007, it's an absolutely stacked match and kind of has a bit of everything to it. But I wanted to think about a good Royal Rumble with a good card underneath. And for me, that is 2017. Yeah, you've got kind of the 2 of the 4 horsewomen in Charlotte Flair and Bayley going at it, and I don't feel like you could really go wrong when it comes to the 4 horsewomen, no matter which iteration you get, which of course on this one, as I've said, is Charlotte Flair and Bayley. And I don't think they could ever put on a bad match. Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens put on a great no disqualification match, and especially that chair spot is brutal. You've got the absolute classic that is John Cena versus AJ Styles, arguably one of my favourite matches of all time. I know it's probably one of the better matches in a lot of other people's opinions, so definitely go check that match out if you haven't seen it. And of course you have the Royal Rumble match, which is absolutely stacked. You know, the likes of Randy Orton, Undertaker, Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Chris Jericho, The Miz, The Big Show, Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, just to name like a quarter of the field that was in that match. And yeah, for people that don't know, the Brock Lesnar elimination is probably one of the biggest shocks of the night. Plus, you have great showings from guys that people probably maybe won't recognise, in the likes of Baron Corbin, Braun Strowman and Sami Zayn. And yeah, I mean, like, it won't be people's necessarily first choice of Royal Rumble matches, but I feel like as an all-round match, it is pretty good. And yeah, I think just as I said, as an overall card, it's an absolute banger, and I just I couldn't really think of another card that has the same vibe to it. I could have quite easily chosen a Rumble pay-per-view that has the men's and the women's on it, but I think for me, this show is just absolutely fantastic. Great matches followed by a great Rumble, and yeah, you should definitely go check that one out if you haven't. After that, I've chosen Survivor Series 2022. This choice is mainly for the War Games matches, and yeah, no, we get 2 really good matches there, but there's also, like, the undercard is pretty decent, okay? Ronda versus Shotzi isn't the best match, but Balor versus Styles is alright. Theory versus Rollins versus Lashley is decent as well. I think, like, the fact that you get such a new face for people in Austin Theory, be such big names in Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins, will maybe get people interested in Austin Theory, but obviously it doesn't really work out the way that it should have with him. Yeah, Styles and Balor is alright, and they say people recognise Ronda Rousey, probably watch that match and realise it's crap. But for me, that's no fault of Shotzi's, that's purely down to Ronda Rousey in my opinion. But then you get to the War Games matches, and for me, I think as far as like 2 of the War Games matches on the card, I feel like this is probably the best representative on the main roster. I think other years that we've had, one of them has kind of outdone the other, whereas these 2 are I would say consistently 2 of the better matches to have on the same card. Obviously, you've got Team Belair versus Team Damage Control, where the women kind of went out there and beat the crap out of each other, and it was just really, really cool to see. And of course, it's nice to see women kind of having the same kind of matches as the men. And of course, you have the Bloodline versus Team Brawling Brutes, which you kind of see the Bloodline come into its peak a lot more here. You've got the whole Sami Zayn thing going on, and that's coming into its own, and you kind of, as I said, you're seeing the Bloodline kind of come into its peak and seeing them like really how they're dominating the landscape of WWE at the time. And yeah, for me, I feel like it's probably one of the best recent Survivor Series cards with War Games on them. And yeah, I feel like the match itself of War Games will pique people's curiosity, as well as seeing, maybe if you watch WrestleMania 37, then watch this, then see how it kind of works out nowadays. You've got an idea of what's going on with the Bloodline, but I think it'll definitely, make people interested in how this story has A, carried on for so long, and B, like what has happened throughout. After that, I have SummerSlam 2014, and I felt like I had to have a SummerSlam on this card, mainly because it's like the second biggest pay-per-view to WrestleMania on the calendar, but I found it very hard to pick a singular SummerSlam in my opinion. I thought 2019 for the debut of The Fiend and kind of Becky Lynch at the height of her powers as the man. I thought 2002, Rock versus Lesnar, you've got Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, and it's a pay-per-view that a lot of people seem to love. But I decided on 2014, and it's mainly because there's a lot going on, but it's very easy to follow. And yeah, I know I said I wouldn't kind of go through each match on the card, but I kind of want to on this one, just to kind of show people kind of why it's so easy to follow, if you will. But yeah, you've got Miz versus Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental Championship. You've got Bray Wyatt versus Chris Jericho. Like 2 absolutely solid matches at the time with the right winners. And kind of having that kind of title change for Ziggler and Miz, I feel like it's really cool. And then you've got Wyatt and Wyatt and Jericho. I know Jericho, another recognizable face, being beaten by a younger guy. Maybe some people don't recognize him. If they've seen The Fiend, they won't straight away realize that is who is behind The Fiend. I feel like it would kind of, again, spark people's curiosity. You've got the kind of frenemies story between AJ and Paige for the Divas, well, back then the Divas Championship. And yes, they have a really good match, and they did have a very good chemistry in the ring, as the only representative of the women on this show. You've got, actually no, it wasn't, that's a complete lie, because you've got Stephanie McMahon versus Brie Bella, which, okay, isn't the greatest match. Obviously Stephanie McMahon doesn't step in the ring often, but the portrayal of Nikki and Brie Bella, people are going to recognise Nikki and Brie Bella, because they're such I wouldn't say massively mainstream, but people I feel like will recognise the Bella twins no matter where you go, and to see Nikki portray Brie will kind of I think will, again, spark people's curiosity, want to see what happened, how they got to that point and all other stuff, and that obviously leads through to Nikki Bella winning the Divas Championship. You've got the Shield breaking up, and there's a show on this list that I'll get to probably in a second, where the Shield are kind of at their highest point. For here, you've got the Shield just after they've broken up. Their breakup is very, very new, and you've got Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins kind of beating the crap out of each other in a lumberjack match, and you've got Roman Reigns getting a pretty big win over a future Hall of Famer in Randy Orton, so it shows the kind of investment they have in Roman, Seth and Dean. And of course you've got the main event where you have Brock Lesnar essentially just destroy John Cena, which I feel like people will see as a shock result. And yeah, I feel like, you know, having that on the card as well and kind of seeing that will show that John Cena isn't as kind of invincible as WWE made him out to be so long ago. And yeah, it shows like just the absolute tear that Brock Lesnar was going on in the early 2010s into the late 2010s and the 2020s. And yeah, I feel like, as I said, just as an overall show, people will very much understand how things are going and kind of where, not exactly where they're heading, but kind of what the idea was behind everything. And as I said, just very, very easy to follow in my opinion. After that, I have WrestleMania 30, and for me, there's kind of three main components that kind of build up and kind of go through WrestleMania 30 that make it such a good show. I do want to give an honorable mention kind of to John Cena versus Bray Wyatt. I think a match that was really good, but I feel like Bray Wyatt kind of brings that really cool vibe that I think will intrigue people very much. And yeah, though the result maybe wasn't the best choice, I feel like having, again, seeing John Cena, such a big name, against this guy, and then again figuring out, like I said, during the SummerSlam part for 2014, that would eventually be the Fiend, and kind of seeing the ups and downs of Bray Wyatt, I feel like will intrigue people. So, but yeah, I mean, firstly for WrestleMania 30, you've got the Shield making very quick work of three legends in the industry in the New Age Outlaws, which people may or may not know, depending on when they kind of started watching wrestling. If they watch the Attitude Era, they'll know who these guys are. And of course, Kane. Now, Kane, of course, at the time was Corporate Kane, and people will be very interested in how the hell that even happened. Trust me, we all are. We don't know why that was a choice. But yeah, seeing these three younger guys completely destroy three legends, I feel like will make people realise just how great the Shield was, even if they weren't probably at the peak of their powers at the time. I feel like people will then go back and maybe find some Shield matches and all that kind of stuff. Secondly, you've got the Daniel Bryan story, of course, which, you know, they watched the Monster promo, and I think it's before the Triple H match. They're 100% going to be invested in his story, and then see him go on to face not only Triple H, but Randy Orton and Batista, three of the biggest names in WWE history, and defeat them all in one night. I feel like it would show just how much of an investment they had in Daniel Bryan, and the fan reaction alone will show them just how much of a big deal this was, and it'll probably hopefully make them go back and watch kind of the build up to this point and what like made Daniel Bryan so special at this time. And lastly, and I think the obvious part for this one, is the Undertaker's streak ending and the sheer volume of that moment. And I know there's a lot of memes and stuff that people already know about, but yeah, the atmosphere through the arena that kind of passes through to the screen, I feel like will show just how huge this moment was, and something that, like, you know, something that, you know, fans will never kind of feel again. And yeah, I feel like it just kind of makes this WrestleMania an absolute pick for people who maybe are returning back or, you know, are new to the company. Following that, I have NXT Takeover New Orleans from 2018. I felt like there had to be an NXT Takeover on this list somewhere, and I'm pretty sure if you choose anything from like the 2017 to 2018 era of Black and Gold NXT, you're going to get like a good show either way, and it's going to show just how great NXT is. But for me, I do have a bit of a bias towards this one. This is by far my favourite takeover, and it's probably one of my favourite shows ever in WWE history. But yeah, it starts with an absolutely fantastic ladder match, and yeah, just the quality of matches from that point never lowers at all. You know, you've got Gargano versus Ciampa main eventing and going out there and just beating the crap out of each other in an unsanctioned match, and really showing that they can tell a great story, not only as a feud but as a match itself. And yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic. You can see the true pure hatred between them two. You've got Shayna Baszler versus Ember Moon, arguably the best women's match in NXT history and one of the best women's matches in WWE history, in my opinion. They go out there and they absolutely kill it. Aleister Black versus Andrade Cien Almas is a masterpiece, in my opinion, and arguably one of the best matches, again, in NXT history, let alone of that year. And yeah, Aleister Black's entrance, I feel like, would definitely intrigue some people, and kind of the vibe it gives. I think a live band played. I'm pretty sure Kane Hill played his theme live as well, giving an even bigger ambience to his entrance. And yeah, just for me, when it comes to NXT Takeover New Orleans, it is the kind of personification of what NXT Takeovers were all about at one point, and what they're all about now as well. I feel like we're getting back into, under a bit of a dip with NXT 2.0, we are now getting back to that point where NXT are outdoing the main roster, but it's a lot harder to outdo the main roster nowadays compared to how it was back in 2017, 18 and 19. But yeah, I mean, for me, everything about this show is just fantastic. And, you know, as I said, the quality of wrestling is just so good, you can't not enjoy this one, in my opinion. And my final pick, and certainly not least, is WrestleMania 17. I mean, it's, of course, arguably one of the best, if not the best WrestleMania of all time. It kind of has everything, and though WrestleMania kind of gave it a run for its money as greatest of all time, I feel like this one still very much stands the test of time. And yeah, the event has pretty much everything. It has an awesome and mental hardcore match between Raven, Kane and Big Show, where they went absolutely everywhere and they did not hold back once. Yeah, speaking of not holding back, the Hardys versus the Dudleys versus Edge and Christian in TLC 2 is so good. You can't not enjoy that match, in my opinion. It is just an absolute classic. Angle versus Benoit, those two just cannot put a bad match on. I know, like, the stuff with Benoit and whatever, but I feel like if you kind of put that, I know you really shouldn't say stuff, but you kind of put it to one side and just enjoy Benoit for the wrestler that he was, you can really enjoy this match. You know, these two have many battles in WWE, and yeah, all of them are pretty good. You've got the McMahons facing off, and for this one, it's kind of more the entertainment side of stuff. You've got Shane McMahon going coast to coast. I think Vince McMahon wrestling in general is just a hilarious spectacle to see. And you've got that massive Linda pop, which, yeah, people maybe won't understand at first, but I feel like the video package does explain the Linda part really well. And I feel like people will still, like, not pop as much, but they still would massively react to when Linda does stand up and kind of help Shane win the match. And of course, you've got the massive main event. I am trying to read notes. You've got China as well, winning the women's championship and just looking like a badass doing it. And then you've got the main event match, which is obviously Stone Cold versus The Rock, and arguably the best of their three matches at WrestleMania. Two of the most recognizable people in WWE history. People, I think, even if they're casual fans, they know how big the feud between Stone Cold and The Rock was, and this is by far their, as I said, their best match. And the heel turn at the end, though, in the long term, didn't really work out the way WWE wanted. Having that moment where Stone Cold aligns himself with Vince McMahon, people will find very shocking. And yeah, for me, you just cannot go wrong with this WrestleMania, and it's, in my opinion, probably the most must-watch event for like new fans or casual fans to get back into it. It has, as I said, literally everything you could possibly need, and yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic, so you should definitely go check it out. So those are my top 10 or just 10 random pay-per-view / premium live event picks for that I would kind of suggest that new fans or like returning casual fans kind of take a look at, and yeah, kind of if they want to get back into it a bit more regularly, they're kind of the shows that I would suggest you watch to kind of understand, or just kind of get into a bit more of wrestling and kind of figure out what you kind of want out of wrestling, if you will. Or if you're a regular fan who was just curious about what I put on this list, do comment below shows that people should be checking out and why, and we can talk about it in the comments, or people can read them and go check them out as well. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and all that good stuff. Do subscribe, as there's all kinds of wrestling content coming up on the channel and already on the channel. You know, you've got regular reviews, regular predictions for pay-per-views and premium live events, not only in WWE, but in AEW as well. There's lists, there's, you know, cards I like to see. There's kind of all the stuff. I've got a new series coming up on the channel where I'm going to talk about wrestlers and kind of do profiles on them for, again, newer fans coming into the WWE universe. So yeah, if you do enjoy that kind of stuff and want to see all that stuff, do stick around and hit that subscribe button. And yeah, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.